Imagine a 7-year-old girl walking around Chicago on a sunny day. Suddenly, she starts to feel funny. The right side of her face is tingling. When she opens her mouth to speak, she can't move her mouth. And the shopping bag she's carrying in her right hand feels like it weighs 1,000,000 pounds. She starts to lose her balance, and then there's just darkness. When she wakes up, she's in the emergency room. The doctor comes in and sits next to her bed and tells her she has suffered from a stroke. The stroke happened because part of her brain did not get enough oxygen or blood, so it was like a heart attack, but for her brain. Now, imagine the devastation of her parents hearing this news. Most parents could never imagine taking care of a child after a stroke, because stroke is often associated with older people. But this is the reality for many children with sickle cell disease, a blood disorder that is one of the leading causes of childhood stroke. Up to 11% of children with sickle cell will have a stroke by the time they turn 20, causing potentially devastating brain damage for the rest of their lives. And although there have been advances in medicine and technology, children with sickle cell are still having strokes. And this is where I come in. My name is Kristina Zvolanek. I'm a PhD candidate in biomedical engineering at Northwestern. My research is focused on how we can better take pictures of the brain with MRI so that we can understand and prevent stroke in sickle cell disease. Today, I'm going to tell you what sickle cell is and how it can cause strokes, our current technology to prevent strokes in sickle cell, and my work on new MRI technology to address this problem. So what is sickle cell and how does it cause stroke? Sickle cell is a genetic blood disorder that causes mutation in a protein called hemoglobin that's found inside your red blood cells. Red blood cells are typically round and flexible, and they can squeeze through the tiniest blood vessels to deliver oxygen. But in sickle cell, this mutation causes the red blood cells to become C-shaped or crescent-shaped or sickle-shaped, and this is actually named after a farm tool called the sickle. These misshapen blood cells cause two problems. First, they become sticky. They can clump up in red blood cells and cause traffic jams, preventing blood from flowing through. It's like Lakeshore Drive, but in your blood vessels. Second, sickle cell blood carries less oxygen than it should. So even if the blood can get through, not enough oxygen is delivered. And when either of these problems happen in a blood vessel supplying your brain, a stroke can occur. Even a temporary disruption in blood or oxygen can cause irreversible brain damage. So what tools are doctors currently using to prevent stroke, and why are they not working? Children with sickle cell currently get annual exams with a special type of ultrasound that looks at the big blood vessels in their brain and tries to see if there are abnormal blood flow patterns. But this exam is limited for several reasons, but most importantly because it only looks at the big blood vessels. However, you have millions of blood vessels in your brain, and most of them are tiny, and strokes can happen in those tiny blood vessels as well. So magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, has been proposed as an alternative way to screen for stroke and sickle cell, because it can take a picture of the entire brain at once, and it has high enough resolution to see those tiny blood vessels. But MRI has its own challenges, especially in children. So my work is focusing on how we can address these challenges of taking MRI pictures in children. And there's 4 main challenges that I'm focusing on. The first is that kids are prone to motion, so this makes our pictures blurry. And sedation is normally used as a way to prevent this, but sedation comes with its own risks. So I'm working on analysis methods that can reduce the blurriness of our pictures on the back end so that we don't need sedation. Second, pictures of the brain with MRI often require injection of chemicals to help the blood vessels be more visible. But these injections are expensive, they're uncomfortable, and they have their own risks. So I'm working on ways that we can modulate your physiology naturally, such as changing your breathing patterns, to achieve similar effects and prevent the need for these injections. Third, I'm working on ways that we can adapt our computer models to calculate blood flow, because sickle cell blood has different properties than the blood of healthy people. And lastly, I'm working on new metrics that we can get from these images, such as the timing of the blood flow. And this is important because it can help us disentangle whether the blood is moving too fast and not delivering oxygen, or whether it's getting stuck in those blood vessels. So ultimately, my goal is to develop brain MRI pictures that can help us see when blood vessels are not functioning properly, and thus might be at a higher risk for causing a stroke. Within my PhD, I'm hoping to develop and test these methods so that we can show doctors that they have promise. Then we could use these MRI pictures to identify kids with sickle cell who are at a higher risk for having a stroke, so that we can prescribe treatments to prevent them. And although my work is focused on sickle cell, these findings have implications for anyone who needs a brain MRI. Now, let's imagine our story from the beginning in a world where we can use these MRI pictures of the brain. Our 7-year-old girl is walking around Chicago on a sunny day, but 1 month ago, she went to the doctor for her annual exam, and she had a brain MRI. On this MRI, the doctor found that some of her blood vessels were not working like they should. And because of this information, he prescribed her treatments before it was too late. So now our 7-year-old girl is walking around just like any other day. She's smiling, she's carefree, and she's looking towards the future with hope. Thank you.